Okay, welcome back to the deep dive. We are jumping into some really fantastic source material you've put in front of us today.
We are.
We're talking about leadership, right? Specifically, what it takes to, well, make extraordinary things happen in organizations.
That's the core. And the main text guiding us is the Leadership Challenge. Kouzes and Posner, now in its 6th edition, so it's got legs.
Decades of research behind it.
Exactly. It's built on asking people, like all kinds of people, different roles, different places. A really simple, powerful question. Think about a time you were really at your personal best as a leader, your peak moment. What did you actually do?
Okay, so our mission here, for you listening, is to pull out the essential insights, the real core stuff from this foundational work.
Yeah, give you a shortcut, kind of, to understanding what leadership looks like when it's really working.
And maybe even more critical, what makes people willingly follow someone, not just because they have to.
And what's amazing, really, when you look at the thousands of these personal best stories they collected, it's the consistency. I mean, contexts are wild, different industry, culture, level, whatever.
Right.
But the actions leaders took when they got people moving,
Yeah.
doing something exceptional, they followed surprisingly similar paths.
Okay, that is fascinating. So what are they? What are these common actions?
They boiled it down to what they called the 5 practices of exemplary leadership.
The 5 practices.
And this is super important right up front. These are behaviors, things you do.
Not personality traits.
Exactly. Not something you're just born with. They're accessible to anyone. Doesn't matter your title, your position, if you choose to learn and use them.
Okay, so what are the 5?
They are model the way,
Okay.
inspire a shared vision, challenge the process, enable others to act, and encourage the heart.
Simple names, but I'm guessing there's a lot packed into each one.
Oh, definitely. You can think of them as like the fundamental operating system for leadership, for getting extraordinary things done.
Operating system, I like that.
And they've been tested and validated, for over 30 years now. It's solid stuff.
Okay, so that's the framework, the 5 practices. But, the big question, does actually doing this stuff make a difference? Where's the proof?
Ah, the proof. Well, the evidence is honestly pretty overwhelming. They developed this tool, the Leadership Practices Inventory, the LPI.
LPI. Yeah.
And they gathered data from millions, literally millions of people using it.
Okay.
And the impact on, say, direct report engagement, it's almost hard to believe.
Really? Tell me about the numbers.
Okay, so nearly 96% of people who report to leaders who use the 5 practices very frequently or almost always
96%.
describe themselves as highly engaged in their work.
Wow, okay. And the comparison?
Compared to people whose leaders seldom use these practices, less than 5% of those folks are highly engaged.
Less than 5%. So hang on, the difference is huge. That's like, what, 20 times more likely?
Almost 23 times, actually. 22.8 times, the data says. Huge differential impact.
That's staggering.
And here's the kicker. This massive impact. It holds true regardless of the direct report's own characteristics. Age, gender, ethnicity, education, position, how long they've been there, industry, nationality. None of that changes it.
So it's not about the follower.
It's about how the leader behaves. It really zeroes in on the leader's actions.
It really drives home that these behaviors are, well, universally powerful.
They seem to be.
What other kinds of positive outcomes did they find linked to these practices?
Well, the list is long. You see things like higher performing teams, obviously, increased sales, better customer satisfaction.
The bottom line stuff.
Yep. And also stronger loyalty, greater organizational commitment, people feeling more motivated. In specific fields, like in healthcare, it links to higher patient satisfaction. In schools, more student and teacher involvement. For associations, bigger membership.
Okay, that covers a lot of ground.
And the tougher metrics, too, like reducing absenteeism and turnover, even positively influencing recruitment. People want to work for these kinds of leaders.
Makes sense. Did they manage to track the financial side, the actual money?
They did. They looked at organizations over a 5-year period.
And then?
The ones where senior leaders really actively use the 5 practices, they saw nearly 18 times higher net income growth.
18 times.
And almost 3 times greater stock price growth compared to organizations where leaders were, less engaged in these practices.
Wow. Okay, so doing these things doesn't just feel good, it actually translates to tangible results. Big time.
Absolutely. The connection is very clear.
That's really powerful data. But the source material also makes this other really critical point, right? It kind of flips the perspective. It's not just about what the leader does.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
You can't forget that leadership is fundamentally a relationship.
A relationship.
Yeah. You don't just get to be a leader because you have the title of the corner office. Leadership is something you have to earn.
Earn from who?
From the people you aspire to lead. Your constituents. People choose whether or not to follow you. Voluntarily.
Right. Which brings us to the other side of the coin. What do people actually look for in a leader they'd want to follow?
And they researched that too, using something called the Characteristics of Admired Leaders Checklist, the CAL.
Okay, CAL. So what did they find? What do people want?
This is another area where the findings are just remarkably consistent. Over 3 decades, across different cultures, demographics.
It stays the same.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
The top 4 qualities people consistently say they look for and admire in a leader they would willingly follow are honest, competent, inspiring, and forward-looking.
Honest, competent, inspiring, forward-looking. Okay, let's unpack those. Why is honest always number one?
Honesty comes out on top time and time again. It's the bedrock. It's the foundation of trust.
Trust. There it is again.
Absolutely. And trust is the foundation of any relationship, right? Especially leadership. People need to believe their leaders are truthful, ethical, principled.
Words like integrity and authentic come to mind.
Exactly. The book uses those as synonyms. But what's really interesting is why it's so personal for followers.
What do you mean?
Well, if you follow someone you even suspect is dishonest, it feels like it compromises your own integrity, your own honesty.
Ah, so it reflects back on you, the follower.
Precisely. Like Jennifer McRae is quoted, why would you want to follow someone if you suspected that they were lying or trying to trick you? It just doesn't work.
No.
And Henretti puts it really starkly. A failure of honesty poisons the team, damages the trust, breaks down team cohesion. It's just non-negotiable. Deeply tied to values, ethics, leaders got to take a stand.
Okay, non-negotiable. Honest equals trust. What about competent?
Competent means you need to believe the leader knows what they're doing, that they're capable, effective.
They can get the job done.
Right. Kevin Schultz says it's difficult to wholeheartedly follow someone who does not know what they're doing. Makes sense, doesn't it? Leadership competence is about having that track record, showing you can deliver, which builds confidence in the followers. Rebecca Sanchez says, with a competent leader, I become a better follower because I have confidence. Confidence in the mission, in the path forward.
Does that mean the leader has to be, like, the smartest person in the room, the top technical expert?
Not necessarily, and the book makes that distinction, which I think is important.
Okay.
Ryan Dalton points out, a leader isn't expected to be an expert in everything, thank goodness.
Right.
Right.
You.
Rather, a leader is expected to have a competent understanding of the organization and be able to recruit and ask instructive and insightful questions. So it's about understanding the business, asking the right questions.
So knowing enough to guide, to ask smart questions, even if you don't have all the answers yourself.
Exactly. And the type of competence needed might shift,
more
strategic higher-ups, more technical, closer to the front lines. But it's always about effectiveness and inspiring confidence. Breadth of experience often helps here, too.
Got it. That's a key distinction. Okay, number 3 was inspiring. What does that look like?
Inspiring is about energy, enthusiasm. Leaders need to be genuinely excited and positive about the future.
They have to believe it themselves first.
Absolutely. That enthusiasm signals their own belief in the vision. Amber Willits talks about the opposite, the worst kind of leader, who gives zero life and energy into their dream. That just leads to hopelessness.
Yeah, who wants to follow that?
Nobody. So leaders have to communicate the vision in a way that makes you want to sign on, that taps into something bigger, a sense of purpose. Ellen Vargas's example of being contagiously enthusiastic. That's it.
Contagiously enthusiastic. I like that.
It speaks to that human need for meaning in what we do.
And I'd guess being inspiring is even more important when things are tough.
Oh, absolutely crucial. When things are ambiguous or difficult, that positive emotion, that belief, it fuels the effort. Catherine Trapani puts it beautifully, saying, being inspiring necessitates that leaders get people to feel at the deepest level that by joining in the cause, their lives and those of others can be uplifted.
Wow. So it's not just cheerleading, it's connecting to deep values.
Exactly. It's emotional. It's about a desired future.
Okay. And the final one of the big 4, forward-looking.
Forward-looking.
Yeah.
This is the one that, perhaps more than any other, really distinguishes leaders from individual contributors or managers.
How so?
People expect leaders to have a sense of direction, a clear concern for the future. Sarah Holden says the leader needs to tell them where they're going, get everyone aligned, heading the same way.
So they can't just be focused on today.
Right. They aren't content with the status quo. They see possibilities. They paint a picture of what could be. Well, Gloria Leung talks about her leader providing the capacity to walk a path toward the future with great confidence. So people want more than just a vague idea. They want a well-defined orientation towards the future. They want to see it described, imagine themselves in it.
And the book mentions this becomes even more important the higher up you go.
Yes, the data shows the expectation for being forward-looking increases significantly with hierarchical level.
Makes sense, right? The scope gets bigger.
Yeah, it does. So these four, honest, competent, inspiring, forward-looking, they're the consistent core of what people want.
Incredibly consistent. Now, how they look in practice might vary a bit. You know, maybe in healthcare, caring gets emphasized more alongside these. In the military, perhaps loyal, context matters for the demonstration.
Sure.
But the underlying expectation for these four, it's remarkably stable.
And if you look at those four, there's a connection to communication theory, isn't there? Source, credibility.
That's a great point. Honesty clearly maps to trustworthiness. Competence links to expertise or capability. Inspiring connects with dynamism, that energy.
Right. And forward-looking. That's the bit that makes it uniquely leadership credibility, beyond just being a credible speaker. It's about direction.
Okay. Which brings us neatly to what Kouzes and Posner call their first law of leadership.
Yes, which is...
If you don't believe in the messenger, you won't believe the message.
Boom. That's it.
Yeah.
Simple, but profound.
It explains why credibility isn't just like a nice bonus. It's the absolute foundation.
It is the foundation. Think about it. If you're asking people to change, to take risks, to challenge how things are done, to maybe work harder,
Yeah.
they have to believe in you, the messenger. If they don't trust you, why would they follow you into uncertainty?
Good point. So protecting your credibility is job one, almost.
You have to guard it fiercely.
And the difference between having high credibility and low credibility, it's pretty stark in terms of how people feel and act on it.
Oh, night and day. The research shows when leaders have high credibility, people feel proud to work there. There's strong team spirit. They feel aligned with the organization's values. They're committed. They take ownership.
That sounds like a great place to work.
It does.
Yeah.
And when credibility is low, it's the opposite.
Mm.
People are just, watching their backs, maybe motivated only by money. They complain privately, gossip. They start polishing their resumes, looking for other jobs. They feel unsupported, unappreciated. It's toxic.
Yeah, definitely seen that happen. You mentioned studies showing this even in like really high stakes situations.
Yes, the book cites research showing leader credibility was the key factor determining influence even in combat zones.
Wow.
And another study by Reichheld on loyalty found that the personal integrity of the senior leadership team was like the center of gravity for business loyalty, customer loyalty, employee loyalty, which directly impacts financial performance.
So integrity, credibility, it hits the bottom line.
Directly.
Okay, so we're convinced credibility is absolutely essential. But what does it look like day to day, behaviorally?
Right. It's not just an abstract concept. When you ask people to describe credible leaders, what do they say?
Things like they practice what they preach.
Yep, that's a common one. Or walk the talk.
Walk the talk, yeah. Actions consistent with words.
Exactly. But the phrase that comes up most frequently, the simplest one, is they do what they say they will do.
Which leads straight to the Kouzes-Posner second law of leadership.
DWYSYWD.
DWYSYWD. Do what you say you will do.
It sounds almost too simple, doesn't it? But think about how powerful it is.
It really is.
And it has two essential parts baked into it. There's the say part.
Okay, the say.
Which means you have to be clear about what you believe. You need to know what you stand for, articulate your principles, your values. You have to say it.
Right, and the second part
is the do.
Yeah.
You have to actually put those words into practice, act on your beliefs consistently, walk the talk.
Do what you said you would do.
That's it.
And that ties directly back to the 5 practices, right? Specifically, the very first one.
You got it. Model the way.
Model the way is DWYSYWD in action.
Pretty much. Model the way is the behavioral demonstration of do what you say you will do, and therefore it's how you build and sustain credibility.
So it involves clarifying your values, that's the say, and then being a living example of those values, that's the do.
Exactly. And that consistent alignment between what you say and what you do day in and day out, that's what people perceive as authenticity. That's what builds credibility.
Okay, so this seems like the perfect place to start digging deeper into the practices. Let's focus on model the way, starting with that first element, clarify values.
Sounds good, because everything really flows from this starting point.
So where does that journey begin for someone wanting to lead? How do you clarify values?
It really has to start internally. It's about asking yourself, honestly, who am I? What do I stand for?
Okay.
What are the core beliefs, the standards, the ethics, the ideals that genuinely drive me? Not what I think sounds good, but what's really true for me.
So it's personal work first.
Absolutely. Clarifying your personal values is the fundamental starting point of model the way, and really of credible leadership.
The book uses the example of Sumaya Shakir, right? Facing that really difficult team situation.
Yeah, that's a great illustration. She walked into a team that was actively hostile, really resistant.
Tough spot.
Totally. And she realized pretty quickly that just trying to change them wasn't going to work. She had to start with herself. She had to get really clear on what she stood for as their leader.
Yeah.
What were her non-negotiables? So she actually went through this process, creating a checklist of her own core values, her principles.
She wrote them down.
Yep. And then, importantly, she shared them openly with the team. This did a couple of things. It grounded her, gave her clarity, but it also showed the team who she was and what they could expect.
It set the standard.
Exactly. And interestingly, it also kind of opened the door for them to think about their own values and eventually to build some shared values for the team, which was key to turning things around.
So clarifying your own values isn't just navel-gazing. It has a practical team impact.
Huge impact.
Yeah.
And as you mentioned, the clarify values component has two parts to it.
Right. Find your voice and affirm shared values.
And finding your voice is absolutely where you have to begin. Step one.
Okay. Find your voice. Why is finding your voice so crucial? Why not just, adopt some standard leadership language or style?
Because credibility hinges on authenticity. People need to feel they're following a real person, not a script.
Makes sense.
If you're just mimicking someone else or saying what you think you're supposed to say, people sense that inauthenticity. It undermines trust.
The book had that story about Raymond Yu.
Yeah, that's a good cautionary tale. He talked about how early on he just parroted his manager's style and words. He didn't find his own way of expressing things.
And he felt it held him back.
He did. He felt he missed opportunities to connect and lead genuinely because he wasn't using his own voice. People follow you, the person.
Okay. And there's data backing this up too, right? The impact of leaders being clear about their own philosophy.
Oh yeah, strong data. Leaders who rank in the top 20% for clarity about their personal leadership philosophy.
Top quintile.
Their teams rate them significantly higher on all sorts of positive outcomes. Team spirit, pride in the organization, clarity about expectations, willingness to work hard, trust in management.
How much higher?
Like over 130% higher on team spirit, 122% higher on pride, 126% higher on clarity of expectations, nearly 140% higher on overall leader effectiveness compared to leaders who are unclear about what they stand for.
Wow. Those are massive differences. So this finding your voice stuff isn't just, soft skills. It directly impacts team performance and morale.
Absolutely. That underscores that idea.
Mm-hmm.
Leading others really does begin with leading yourself. And leading yourself starts with getting crystal clear on your values.
Mm-hmm.
The book mentions Yum, brands, how their leadership approach emphasizes leaders working on themselves first. And Ruthie Ladonikoff's realization.
What was that?
She realized that her values were actually the source of her strong opinions and arguments. Understanding that connection made her more confident, more centered, more authentic.
Knowing why you believe what you believe.
Exactly. Your values are those enduring beliefs. They're your personal bottom line. They act as your guide, your compass.
A compass.
Yeah, they guide your decisions, big and small. They help you set priorities. They explain your choices to others and to yourself. And in chaotic times, they provide focus. Paul DeBarre used his values to set the tone and expectations immediately when he took over his security team. Classic example of using values as that compass.
Okay, so find your voice is about discovering those core values, and then you have to actually say them.
Right. You have to say it in your own words.
Mm-hmm.
That's the crucial next piece. It connects back to the say in DWYSYWDA.
Why in your own words?
Again, authenticity.
Yeah.
And connection. You have to articulate what you stand for in a way that feels genuine to you. Leadership is sometimes called an art, right?
Yeah.
Well, part of that art is personal expression. You need to express your values, your vision, uniquely in your style for people to really connect with you.
The example of Andrew Levine and Pranav Sharma at Young Storytellers seemed relevant here.
Yes, that's a great one. Andrew didn't just give the mentors a script. He pushed them, like Pranav, to think about why they personally joined, to find their own unique reasons. By sharing his own passion in his own words, he helped them connect to their authentic motivations, their voices. And that let them connect much more deeply with the kids they were mentoring.
So you can't just borrow someone else's value speech.
It just doesn't work. People see through it. Authenticity requires your style, your words reflecting your beliefs.
It needs to feel like that analogy from Carrie Ann Austria about trying on clothes.
Exactly. Does it fit who you are, your words, your actions? They have to feel congruent. They have to feel right for you. Shandon Lee Fernandez makes that critical point. Discovering your personal values has to be the first step because, as she says, only when leaders discover and clarify what they expect of themselves can they expect others to follow.
You have to know yourself first.
Right. When you understand your values, articulate them in your own voice, and then act consistently with them. It just makes sense to people. It creates like this intrinsic cohesion and external alignment on the team.
Okay, this is really laying the groundwork. Let's quickly recap the key threads we've pulled out so far today.
Sounds good.
So, leadership, fundamentally, is about mobilizing other people to want to strive for extraordinary things. It's an action, a process.
And that process is best understood through the 5 practices. Model the way, inspire a shared vision, challenge the process, enable others to act, and encourage the heart.
But underlying all of that, the absolute non-negotiable foundation is credibility.
Yep. And people grant you credibility based primarily on whether they see you as honest, competent, inspiring, and forward-looking.
That credibility isn't just a feeling, it's demonstrated through behavior specifically. By doing what you say you will do. DWISYWD.
Which brings us full circle back to the first practice, model the way. It is the practice of DWISYWD.
And the essential starting point for modeling the way, for building that credibility for DWISYWD, is clarifying your personal values.
Knowing what you stand for.
Finding your voice. And being able to articulate it authentically.
Exactly.
You know, this deep dive really makes it clear. Leadership isn't some, like, mystical quality only a few people have. It's not about title.
No, it's a set of skills, behaviors.
Yeah.
Things anyone can learn and choose to practice.
And the journey starts. Well, it starts within. Getting clear on your own foundation.
It really does. The most effective leaders know what they believe, and they let those beliefs guide their actions publicly and consistently.
Okay, so here's something for you, our listener, maybe chew on this week. A provocative thought to wrap up. If clarifying your personal values is truly the foundational first step, the start of modeling the way, which shows your credibility, which is the bedrock of leadership, what's one specific step you could take, maybe just this week, to get even clearer on what you genuinely stand for?
And just as importantly, how will you make sure your actions, your do, actually lines up with that? Say, what's one way you'll live it out?
Thanks for listening. Visit our library and subscribe below for more book summaries. This has been a Sprint Reads production.